This is our special day, the third Sunday. This is Father's Day. So I'd like to wish each and every father a happy Father's Day, and also the ones that had to substitute as the father, such as the grandparents, and then some of the mothers had to do dual roles as mother and a father. So I'd just like to say happy Father's Day to each and every one. He downed with Pur, his servant, unto the outside of the armed men that were in the host. And the Midianites and the Amalekites and all the children of the east lay along in the valley like grasshoppers for multitude. And their camels were without numbers, as the sand by the seaside for multitude. And when Gideon was come, behold, there was a man that told a dream unto his fellow, and said, Behold, I dreamed a dream, and lo, a cake of barley bread tumbled into the host of Midian, and came into a tent, and smote it that it fell, and overturned it, that the tent lay alone. And his fellow answered and said, This is nothing else save the sword of Gideon, the son of Joash, a man of Israel, for unto his hand has God delivered Midian and all the hosts. And it was so. When Gideon heard the telling of the dream and the interpretation thereof, that he worshiped and returned to the host of Israel and said, Arise, for the Lord has delivered into our hands the host of Midian. And he divided the 300 men into 3 companies, and he put a trumpet in every man's hand with empty pitchers and lamps within the pitcher. And he said unto them, Look on me, and do likewise. And behold, when I come to the outside of the camp, it shall be that as I do, so shall ye do. When I blow with the trumpet, I and all that are with me, then blow ye the trumpets also on every side of all the camps, and say, The sword of the Lord and of Gideon. So Gideon and the 100 men that were with him came unto the outside of the camp in the beginning of the middle watch, and they had but newly set the watch. And they blew the trumpets and brake the pitchers and were in their hands. And the 3 companies blew the trumpets and brake the pitchers and held the lamps in their left hand and the trumpets in their right hand, so they could blow with it. And they cried, The sword of the Lord and of Gideon. And they stood every man in his place round about the camp, and all the host ran and cried and fled. Now we know that last week, Gideon wasn't on the scene. But after Deborah and Barak delivered the Israelites from Canaanites, they had peace in the land for 40 years. Then the Israelites done evil in the Lord's sight, so the Lord handed them over to the Midianites for 7 years. And the Midianites, they were so cruel to them that they was hiding in mountains and caves and everything, and they would take the land, they would take the crops, and they would also take the stock. So God sent Gideon to deliver Israel from the Midianites. So Gideon wasn't a very brave man. He was hiding when the angel of the Lord came to him, and told him that he was going to send him to make that delivery. So what Gideon did was he called for some help. He called the Manasseh, the Asher, and all the tribes to get him some help. So he had 32,000 warriors. And then Gideon told the Lord, since you have said and promised me that I would be the one that would deliver Israel from the Midianites, give me a sign. So he said in the process, I want you to take this fleet and overnight have it wet and the ground around it be dry. So God did that. So the next morning when Gideon got up, the fleet was wet and the ground around it was dry. So what Gideon did, he wrung it out and a bowl full of water came out. So that was one thing. So then Gideon said, Lord, don't be angry with me. Say, show me another sign. Say, have the fleet to be dry and the ground around it to be wet. So God did that. And Gideon was kind of happy about that because he felt that what God had done, that God was going to give him the power to rescue Israel from the Midianites. It says, and it came to pass the same night that the Lord said unto him, arise and go thee down into the host, for I have delivered it into thy hands. Now Gideon had 32,000 warriors, but the Lord told him, you got too many men. Well, if Israel would have won the war with all those men, they would have claimed that they had victory themselves. So God told him, out of the 32,000, I want you to ask the ones that are timid, fearful, and that do not want to fight, and let them leave the mountain. So 22,000 left, and that left Gideon with 10,000 warriors. Then God told him, you still have too many men. So take them down to the stream and separate them and let them drink water. Say the ones that kneel down and put their mouth into the stream, some of them going to do that, and then some will take the water, scoop it up in their hands, and lap it like a dog. Say the ones that take the ones up in the hand and lap it like a dog, you keep them. So that was 300. Now the commentaries say when the soldiers put the face down into the water to drink, it impedes them that they will not be able to see the enemy. But when you scoop it in your hand and lap it like a dog, you'll be able to see your surroundings. So if any enemy come, then you will do that. So now Gideon is down to 300 men. It's saying the Lord came to, and it came to pass the same night that the Lord said unto him, arise, get thee down unto the host, for I have delivered it into thy hands. But if thou fear to go down with that servant down to the host. So what God is doing is telling Gideon to go down and get close to the Midianite camp, a little spy, to find out just as what is going on in the camp. Say, and thou shalt hear what thou say, and afterwards shall thine hand be strengthened to go down unto the host. Then went he down with Pur, his servant, unto the outside of the arm when there were men in the host. So Gideon and his servant went down, and he was close enough to hear what was going on. So, and it said, and the Midianites and Amalekites and all the children of the east lay along the valley like grasshoppers for multitude, and their camels were without numbers as the sand by the seaside for multitude. Now, the enemy was numbered at 135,000. And they had so many camels that it was hard to count because each man had a camel, plus the camels were used to carry food, carry the tents, and all this other stuff. So they was outnumbered over 100,000, and then they had all the camels there. Say, when Gideon behold, there was a man that told a dream unto his fellows and said, behold, I dream a dream, and lo, a cake of barley bread tumbled into the host of Midian and came into a tent and smote it, that it fell, and overturned it, that the tent lay alone. So Gideon and his servant was close enough to hear the conversation of the Midianites. And when he had the dream, they had one of the enemies interpret the dream. He said, and his fellow answered and said, this is nothing else save the sword of Gideon. and the son of Joash, a man of Israel, for into his hand has God delivered Midian and the host. So here we have one of the enemies dreaming a dream, and the other one interpreted that Gideon was going to have victory over the Midianites. So after Gideon overheard what they was doing, then he got all elated. He was happy about it because he knew that the Lord is going to come, do what he said it was going to do. So immediately, Gideon got his men together. He said, and it was so when Gideon heard the telling of the dream and of the interpretation thereof, that he worshiped and returned unto the host of Israel and said, arise, for the Lord has delivered into your hand the host of Midian. Now, the first thing Gideon did was after he got back was he worshiped the Lord, because the Lord said that he would be victorious and that he would take charge of everything. So he called his men together. He was all elated that God had told him that he was going to be victorious. The Lord had delivered into his hands the hands of Midian. And he divided the 300 men into 3 companies, and he put a trumpet in every man's hand, and with empty pitchers and lamps within the pitcher. The plan for victory was rather simple. Each soldier in Gideon's army were to take with him 3 things: a trumpet, or either a ram horn, an empty pitcher, and a lamp within that pitcher. Now, Gideon was planning on attacking. Surprise would be Gideon attack. So what he did was he waited until they had the changing of the guards. During Gideon time, the changing of the guards was like 6 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and 6 o'clock again. Now, the ones that on guard duty, when they come back, they're rather tired, so then they are sleepy. And the ones that's not on guard duty, they'll stay up a little late. So Gideon planned his attack at midnight. So Gideon said unto them, and he said unto them, look on me and do likewise. And behold, when I come to the outside of the camp, it shall be that as I do, so shall you do. Well, Gideon didn't have the type of instruments that they have today. He had 300 men, and he separated them into hundreds and put them on 3 sides of the enemy camp. Now, he didn't have no way of telling them, you have the cell phones today, and the military got all these extra phones and how they could contact. So Gideon didn't have that. So he told the soldiers, say, do as I do. So it is midnight, so only the first few could see what Gideon was doing, but he said, as I do, you do also. So he told them that he was going, when I blow a trumpet or the ram horn, all that are with me, then blow ye their trumpet, also every side of the camp, and say, the sword of the Lord and of Gideon. So Gideon informed the 300 that as I do, you do also. So by being midnight, only the few could see what he was doing. So what he done, he wanted everybody else to do. Now, everybody had a ram horn. Everybody had a clay pitcher with a torch in it. So he said, when I blow, the men with me is going to blow their ram horn. And then the rest of them going to blow their ram horn. And then they had a war cry. Say, the sword of the Lord and of Gideon. So Gideon waited until midnight, and he went and got near the camp, and there, just like he said, when he blew the ram horn, the ones with him blew their ram horns, and then the entire 300 men blew their ram horns. Gideon broke the clay pitcher, and everybody else broke their clay pitcher. And then he put up the flame, the torch, in the left hand, and then they was blowing the ram horn in the right hand. Now here you have 135,000 men with camels at midnight, and they were surprised. They didn't know what was going on. All this noise and then all the lamps, so they thought that they were surrounded by the enemy. realizing that they didn't see anybody. It's nighttime. You have the war cry was the sword of the Lord and of Gideon. And then you have all this noise going on and see all these lights flickering. So what they did was they was confused. And being confused, they didn't know where the enemy was. They was confused, disoriented, and they began to run. And anybody that touched them, they thought that that was the enemy, so they was killing each other. So they was fighting within themselves. So as soon as the men that blew the horn, all around the camp and shouted for the Lord of Gideon, the blowing of these 300 horns would indicate that it's a very large army, quite the opposite of Gideon's troops. See, in addition to blowing the ram horn, the men were to shout the sword of the Lord and of Gideon. So they were shouting the war cry. It was just after midnight, after the changing of the guards, when Gideon and the 100 men with him reached the edge of the Midianite camp. Suddenly they blew their ram horns and brake their jaws. Then all three groups blew their horn and broke into their jaws. They held the blazing torch in their left hand and in the horn their right hand to blow within. And all should shout at the war cry, a sword for the Lord and for Gideon. Being disoriented, being afraid of what was going on, the Midianites started running, stamping over each other. You got 1,000 camels running around, stamping over people. So it was a whole lot of confusion. And that was the key. Surprise attack at midnight for Gideon. It said Gideon warriors simply watched as the army of the Midianites fell into panic, confusion, disoriented, and they retreated. Not one man had to draw a sword to defeat the enemy. Gideon's small army could never have brought about such a victory of its own strength. God wanted to demonstrate to Israel that victory depends not on strength or numbers, but on obedience and commitment to him. So Gideon didn't do this by himself. If Gideon had kept the 32,000 warriors that he had, he would have claimed that the victory was done by the Israelites. But God had him to get down to 300 men so that God could get the glory. When Gideon got the victory, he knew that it wasn't him that had done it, that it was the Lord. So all the time, whenever things go wrong, and you be depending on somebody, depend on God, because you and God are a majority. When God is with you, you can only have victory. Amen. Amen. If you don't have a church home, I would like to invite you to our house. All you have to do is just call the number of Mount Bethel Missionary Baptist Church, 1620 Helena Street, and the secretary will get back with you, and then you can become a member of our house. God bless you, and may he continue to keep you. Amen, amen, and amen.